ways. I know how they feel. They're great. They're loyal. They want to bang for their buck.
Coming in hot is episode 49 of the LarschCast. On today's episode, we have hosts TJ Dollywall and Sad Oberoi chatting with Randip Janda from Sportsnet 650. It's your boy Gulu, the producer, and we're going to be discussing Canucks hockey like we always do. Let's go.
Hold up. Hold up. Hold up. Hope you're ready for the next episode. Hey.
Welcome everybody to a special episode 49 of the LarschCast. My name is Tej Dollywall, and I'm here with my co-host Sad Oberoi, and we have our producer Gulu Nanda, and a special guest for today, none other than Randip Janda of Sportsnet, Deep Reach on Sportsnet 650, and the host of Hockey Night in Canada, Punjabi. Hi, good to have you on.
It's awesome to be with you guys here. It's been a while. It's been a long time. I know we've been trying to work on this thing for a long time. And I picked up the accent on your name.
Stage, yes.
It's Stage.
Well, you might as well say the funny little thing you said before the show started. So you had a little debate with some of your guys on how to say my name.
Well, I haven't had that debate, but I'm going to set the record straight right now because they call you Tej and all that. No. It's Tej, if you want to anglify it, but it's not Tej. It's Tej. So Walker, Breach, all of those guys that have been on the pod as well, on the LarschCast, setting the record straight, it's Tej.
It's true. It's Tej if you want to say it proper. If you want to anglify it, it's Tej. If you're a close buddy, you can call me TJ. And then if you don't know who I am and you want to
can I call you Jackass?
And you want to say Tej, because Tej is going to I'll raise an eyebrow, be like, are you my buddy or an enemy saying that? So.
All right. Well, there we go. Set the record straight.
Tej and me used to play ball or ice hockey together, and we used to call him ball hogs. So I was just curling under the puck.
Love it.
Before we get into the show, a lot of things to talk about. I'm kind of riled up about some topics here too. I know Randip has some comments about some of the things we're going to say as well. I just want to announce we have a very cool giveaway. We've teamed up with this group called Gourmet Grays on Instagram. Now, Gourmet Grays, they're like a assorted bread and cheese and meat box, really well put together, beautiful stuff. They provide amazing and delicious Grays boxes. And we're going to give one away valued at $89. They have they call themselves a perfect option for a date, picnic with friends, or it's good to have on a table for holiday parties. You can use it as a great gift for party hosts. Gourmet Grace is a newly established venture founded by two friends who have a passion for food. They love hosting for their loved ones and wanted to make a mark in the I can't say this word, charcuterie grazing industry.
Charcuterie.
I didn't know that one. I'm sorry, boys. But they were founded in August 2019. They specialize in creating beautifully assembled boxes and tables filled with delicious meats, cheeses, breads, crackers, fruits, and veggies for any event or occasion. Check them out on Instagram at Gourmet Grays. We have an $89 giveaway coming. More details are going to be announced on Twitter and social on Instagram following this episode. But just to let you guys know, very exciting stuff here. They also offer keto, gluten-free, vegan options as well. And they have a Father's Day promotion coming up for this weekend. So check it out and stay tuned for the details.
So I've been thinking about what I'm going to do with the girlfriend on the weekend. Yeah. Sounds good. Pick up the
Gourmet Grays box right now.
Are you doing a Father's Day thing for your girlfriend? Hey, Gulu, you doing Father's Day with your girlfriend?
No, man. Date night, bro. Well, you don't have date night anymore?
I'm married, man.
It's a little different for us too. We try to get once a month. I don't know, Randip, are you married?
I'm not married, guys. I guess I'm the single guy here, right?
I think so.
All right, there you go. But Gourmet Grays, you don't hook that up for guests? What's going on here? Come on now.
Well, hey, listen. I'll talk to it's my cousin actually who does it. She's involved. So I'll talk to her and maybe we can hook something up for you.
I'm playing. I appreciate it.
I'm not playing. I'm being real.
You know what? Actually, Richie would probably appreciate it. I know you're a co-host. Richie would appreciate that for sure.
Great. Honestly, if you look at their page on Instagram, they do amazing stuff. Blown away by the detail. And I'm really happy to give away an $89 box on behalf of the LarschCast. And anyways, Randip, if you want one, come and let me know. I'll get one for you too. No problem.
Sounds good.
So
good.
Let's talk about Canucks. It's kind of crazy to talk about the Canucks actually because Buffalo is going wild right now. What's happening in Buffalo. They just 30 front office executive members. But I want to I do want to talk about the Canucks, and I want to draw some comparisons. Unfortunately, the comparisons are being drawn anyways, but I want to have my own little, staple or put my own stamp on that. But first, I want to ask you guys, in terms of the Canucks, what are your thoughts on where this team is at in the timeline of our rebuild, or under Jim Benning, where we should hope to be and where we should be next year? What are your thoughts, Randy? We'll start with you.
I think when you're talking about the Canucks on their timeline, the timeline really now has been adjusted to Quinn Hughes and Elias Pettersson. It's not necessarily Jim Benning as far as I see it, but when you add those special talents to your roster, that's when the new timeline started. Can you add, players, and can you add the right pieces around those guys? So as far as this season is concerned, with Quinn Hughes, with Elias Pettersson, in year 2 of Pettersson, you're right where you want to be, is competing for the playoffs. Ideally in the playoffs if you beat Minnesota, but if you would have talked, and I always say, go back to August or September, if you would have said the Vancouver Canucks are in a playoff spot or could potentially be in the playoffs, is that success or is that failure? Most people would have said it's successful, right? Mm-hmm. Competing in the final stretch of the season with a couple of games to go, if you're in it, that's success. My grade, I'm not grading on a different curve all of a sudden. To me, that's still the case. If you beat Minnesota, guess what? You're on that timeline. You have to be a relevant team in the next couple of years. You have to turn yourself a contender. And Jim Benning's responsibility and how he does that and how he makes all those moves with the cap, that's on him. He's got to figure that out this offseason. But as of right now, that timeline's still there. Mm-hmm. Pettersson is doing his thing, 66 points again this year, better defensively. Quinn Hughes, what can you say about the kid? The guy's unbelievable. When you have those two weapons, you have to build out. And this year they're on track. I really wonder how Jim Benning's going to build it out further. That's a challenge. And how he's going to, dump that Louis Eriksson contract, how he can find a suitor maybe for Brandon Sutter. But we'll get there when you get there. As of right now, I think it's still on track.
What do you make of the, Ian McIntyre? I think he was on with you guys, right?
Yeah. Yes.
He said some interesting things about the whole Chris Tanev and the going back and forth with his agency there. And so what did he clarify in terms of what Chris Tanev actually said in regards to his upcoming free agency and whether or not he'd be willing to take a discount to stay here with the Canucks? What did
he did specify that Tanev said more guys will be taking one-year deals, right? Never specifying that he would be one of those guys, but he did say he wanted to stay in Vancouver. So you got to be very careful in how you kind of understand that. And Ian's got, like any good journalist, he always records and he knows. So Ian's a trusted guy in the market, and I respect him because he knows his stuff. He knows his shit going back almost 30 years in this game. So from that perspective, as far as Chris Tanev is concerned, everybody, understands that he wants to stay in Vancouver. When this is the only market that he's known. This is the only city, calls it home. But at the same time, how do you make it work, right? This is not going to be all that different from the Alex Edler situation about a year ago. Is a player wants to stay in Vancouver, you want him back to a certain extent, but there's always a price, there's always term. And this year it's even more unique because in previous years with Alex Edler and last year, it was, okay, he can command a fair bit of money and term on the market July 1st. We knew that last year. That was part of the discussion. The question was, does he want to hit the market? We found out, no, he didn't. He wanted to stay in Vancouver. With Tanev, the market's changed, man. If the cap stays flat, you have no incentive to hit the market. You might just say, hey, kick the can down the road for another year. I'll take a one-year deal, and I'll see what the situation is. I know Vancouver, we're building something special here. So I think the Canucks actually have more leverage this year with Chris Tanev based on that fact.
I agree with that. And what I'll say about that is I think if you're Chris Tanev, it's tough for you to take a one-year deal because, I don't think he trusts his own body just like anyone else would, right? And from the Canucks point of view, I'm a great, big fan of the team, love Chris Tanev, but I don't even think I'd want to re-sign him for any price because there's other things you have to do. He can't be a priority 1, 2, or 3, right? Priority 1 and 2 has got to be Markstrom and Toffoli, and then after that you have to round out your bottom 6. And I think between Virtanen and Levo, they're more important at this point than Chris Tanev is. So unless he's willing to come back for, 1 year at like $2.5 million, I would just say, okay, well, thank you very much.
Let's just say,
point, though, because with Tanev, there's that argument of, is he Mark Mathot to Erik Karlsson, right? Like, remember when Mathot in 2016, 2017 was playing sidekick with Karlsson? He's not Mark Mathot. Chris Tanev is better, and remember, Mark Mathot at that point was making $4.9 million. So Tanev's not going to get anywhere near that based on he shouldn't get anywhere near that.
Yeah, he shouldn't. Yeah.
I think we're also undervaluing him a little bit as well, because Quinn Hughes is important, and he's the key piece on this roster along with Elias Pettersson. But at the same time, when Hughes played with Myers, they didn't have that much success. They had limited success. So I think we got to get.
There were moments that they had some success though, but then they started to tail off. I think,
it didn't have that staying power, which Hughes and Tanev did have, right? So there is some value to the Canucks and Chris Tanev too.
I have to add on that though. I have to add on that, Randy, but it's true. There were some moments where that pairing didn't look good, and the numbers showed that. But the same could be said of Tanev as well. With Tanev and Hughes, they started out strong, and then they tailed off a bit, which is why Travis Green made the switch, I think. And then you saw Hughes and Myers play great for like a stretch of like 9 or 10 games, and then they tailed off too. So there's a little give and take both ways there. But I think with Hughes, as he develops, you're going to see him be less dependent on his partner, and dictate more on the ice by himself and his own talents. And so in that regard, if we think Tanev was important this year to be that shelter for Hughes defensively, well, lo and behold, Hughes is actually pretty good defensively himself. Maybe he doesn't need that.
Or he's good enough, right? He's good enough. Like, look how he played with Luke Schenn when Luke Schenn was here for a cup of tea, right? I mean, no one's going to say Luke Schenn's a bona fide top 6 defenseman on any team in the league. I mean, he might be a good 7 or 8, but he played admirably with Quinn Hughes. The way Quinn Hughes plays, I don't think you need that steadying influence, right? As much as the other players.
This is the thing I'm thinking about, all right? Because the Vancouver Canucks 5-on-5 are a marginal team. I mean, some nights they're better than teams, some nights they perform less or worse than teams, right? So they really make up their hay in the special teams. So who's going to replace Chris Tanev's minutes on defense and the special teams there on penalty kill?
Well, the penalty kill, that's a good point.
There are guys you can sign that are defensive defensemen that are much cheaper than what Tanev would be, or even Stetcher. And Stetcher's not really a defensive defenseman. I can't say off the top, but I know
a great PK though.
Frequently you see deals made in the NHL with guys like Luke Schenn and even Jordy Ben initially was thought to be that kind of guy, but there are players available that don't draw that same attention for their lack of offensive production, and their value takes a hit because value in free agency is mostly related to points, I think, and also obviously the minutes played, and you see an inflation with the offensive producers versus the defensive defensemen. So I think there could be avenues there.
I think one thing I agree with when you come to talk about priorities, yes, Markstrom to Foley, without a doubt, top 2 priorities when it comes to the team, especially when it comes to the UFA status. But with Chris Tanev, I think a lot of people and myself sometimes get caught in this, is that we think top 4 defensemen. Ideally, you want him to transition to be that third pairing defenseman at some point. That's the key. But you also have to pay him like a third pairing defenseman at some point in his career. So I think if we talk about that dollar value, about 4.5 or what he's making right now, of course, that's not a third pairing defenseman dollar value. So how do you fairly transition him to that right-hand side third pairing maybe next year or the year after? In the short term,
you have to exercise that leverage this season here.
That's exactly what it is.
Period.
Yeah. So you're going to give him like a 2-year deal, right?
You're going to have to give him a 1-year deal maybe.
No,
$3 million. He will go that low, but if he doesn't, he's gone. So he may go that low.
You can't do 1 year at 4.5.
They do have on him this year.
You can't do 1 year at 4.5. The only way to do what Randip is saying, you have to go 2 years at 3 years, and you have to drop his salary from 4.5 to 3 to 2. And that way you bring the average down to actually make it worthwhile on a longer term contract. I think that's the one thing you have to do.
It's a blunt move to say, hey, we want you in Vancouver, but if you want to stay here, this is how much you're going to have to command. You are ideally a third pairing defenseman. We're going to have to make room for another defenseman to come in to take your minutes as you transition out of that space, right? Because it's either Troy Stetcher or Chris Tanev at this point. You can only keep one of those guys. And then at some other point, you're going to have to try to find value, whether that's Brogan Rafferty, whether that's Jordy Ben playing on the right-hand side where he actually looked better this year in certain parts. You're going to have to make that move. It's just, can Chris Tanev be that stopgap for 1 more year and that new contract has to reflect that. He's
Yeah.
got to
Yeah,
take it.
no,
He's
that's
got
a
to take
really
a
good
hit.
point.
Yeah, I
Really good
absolutely I agree
point
with
there.
that. But I again going to Chris, Stetcher there. Stetcher's a great example. I mean, if you have to make a choice between Stetcher, who's probably going to make between 3.5, and Chris Tanev, then it just honestly comes down to who you're going to get for less money.
Yeah, it's going to
Because-
come down to the money between those two. I think we all know that for sure. But like we've agreed on, Toffoli and Markstrom are 1 and 2. Now, I want to ask you guys, who is number 1 of that 2? Is Toffoli the number 1 priority for you guys? Because he is for me. Or is
I don't think
Markstrom
it
the number
matters.
1 priority?
I think it's 1 and 1, or 1A, 1B. Like it's not
Okay,
a
well, who's
comparison.
1A? That's my question. Who's 1A for you? Sat, go ahead. Who's
You don't
your
have
1A?
to negotiate with one player, then the next. You negotiate with both at the same time.
I'm just curious to see where you feel.
I don't
Hypothetical.
put anyone higher. I don't put anyone
Okay,
higher because
that's fair.
I'll
That's
tell
fair.
you why though. I'll tell you why. Because
Sure.
with Markstrom, right? It's not like there's no one behind him, right? They can make the argument that Demko's there, and they can
Yeah.
make the same argument that there's a good goalie coach in here that can do wonders with Demko, just like it did with Markstrom. At the same time, Toffoli, okay, he's a right winger. The Canucks desperately need a right winger, but they still have Brock Besser, and they have Levo and Bertan, and they have a lot of players, right?
And McEwen
So-
himself can step up. too,
McEwen,
so
yeah,
there's-
sure. Those are kind of lower down, right? But there's players
Yeah.
that can fill that, second role gap that they had
It-
for the
It makes
65,
sense why
70%
you
of the
would
year.
say they're equal. I can. How about
Yeah,
you, Randy?
I wouldn't have a preference.
Okay, I'll give you an answer on this one, unlike Sat, where basically I'm going to go Markstrom here because
Okay.
as of right now, the Vancouver Canucks are still a team that's relying on good goaltending, right? You take away half of those half of those 8 stolen games this year, and that's the difference between making the playoffs and not making the playoffs. So until Thatcher Demko can show you consistently that he can be that guy, or at least the team gets that much better to drive more play, to be better 5-on-5 and not so reliant on special teams, Jacob Markstrom's still that answer for me, right? Because we don't know when that's going to happen. Are they still a power play dependent team next year? If they are, guess what? They're going to need Markstrom. Like you can, that game against Carolina, that game against LA this year, the 2 shutouts. But I know, that game against Vegas this year, where down to the final seconds of the game, he ends up keeping the minute and Tanev scores an OT. Like you're not even in those games if Jacob Markstrom's not a net. And
Well,
and as
it's
good
very
as Thatcher
true.
Demko is, and value is what you want at a goaltender position, like he ain't there yet. So is it another year from now? And that's why I'd say in the short term, priority number 1 is still Markstrom.
That's a good answer. Yeah, I mean, I can see that. Gulu, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with Markstrom, man. I mean, he stole so many games for him this year. The Vancouver Canucks, they wouldn't be in the same position if they didn't have him. So I agree that Markstrom should be the number 1 priority. Although Toffoli's right there too. I mean, you ended up paying a lot to get his services, and if it was just for 10 games out of the season, if the season's ended now, then that would be pretty bad value, and they would come out losers on that end.
I want to point out one thing about Markstrom that a lot of people may not remember or factor into their analysis here. When he was injured, his meniscus injury, initially there was no threat of a pandemic, and so he was facing a timeline of recovery based on making it back for the playoffs. And that ultimately, there's a chance that he may have taken a shortcut in his surgical options to get himself back quicker, rather than the longer term recovery approach. That would take him out of the playoffs and into the next season. Now, we don't have the details of his specific meniscus injury, but looking into the meniscus types of injuries and his timeline, it seems like he did have a surgery that fixed his issue, which would indicate he possibly took a shortcut. So there is that concern, that little tiny asterisk about his long-term health, which is why I personally am more comfortable putting Toffoli ahead of Markstrom. And the second reason I would put Toffoli ahead of him is because I think having a strong top 6 can elevate your team. Like a strong top 6 that has two-way lines, 2 lines that can play two-way hockey, that puts your team in a better position on a night in and night out basis, because you can shelter the bottom 6 and you can shelter the defense and the goaltending to an extent, because your driving factor is that the top 2 lines. And so without Toffoli, you don't have a bona fide top 6 or a bona fide two-way lines in the top 6. So that's the reason I put Toffoli ahead of Markstrom personally.
And both of those options are great though, because how can you say anything bad about Tyler Toffoli with what he's done with the Canucks, right? Like legitimately, he's that winger that line is needed. And it just got a little blend of everything, which is, you've heard Travis Green talk about a team that's tough to play against. Jim Benning said that in his introductory press conference when he was hired. But Travis Green has talked about buying and playing a certain way. Like Tyler Toffoli, JT Miller represent that. So I'm with you. Like having two waves of top lines coming in and pushing it and driving that play, like that's what St. Louis did last year. That's what Washington did the year before with Backstrom, and then you had Kuznetsov and Ovechkin on separate lines, right? They had three lines coming in waves. Like you need that to be a successful team. So I think both
and the Capitals is a good example actually, Randy, because their goaltending was shaky. They had Holtby and Grubauer playing back and forth. That's a perfect example for why Toffoli could be.
About the Caps now too, though. They said Holtby's going to be a starter when they start their games now too. I don't know why he would be the starter, but
yeah.
So, but he did rebound after, right? Like, so all of those extra, those legit goalies get the benefit of that because they got a cup, they got that ring. Marc-Andre Fleury could have a legitimately terrible year.
Yeah.
And, he's going to probably start in front of Robin Lehner. And remember, I forget sometimes too that Robin Lehner's in Vegas now. But
also we also forget Marc-Andre Fleury is like 36 years old or 37. He's up there in age, man. It doesn't seem so real the way he looks so young still, but we're gonna move forward here to a first installment of my Tej Talks, and I'm gonna go on a little rant here, and I apologize to you guys because I'm gonna take up a couple minutes of your time.
I'm going on mute for now. And
I know I warned you, Randy, I'm gonna be doing this, but I want your opinions on this. I touched on a little bit of it in the beginning of the show, but here I go. Okay,
this is the natural evolution. Pratt's Takes, what was it called? Dave Pratt used to have his segment, Pratt's Rant.
Yeah,
okay, now it's Tej Talks.
Karras has his, I think he goes on a rant, but I didn't think about starting something for that reason. I'm just thinking because this is on my chest and I got to get it out. And today it kind of boiled over when the stuff that happened in Buffalo. For here, the Tej Talk. First installment, here we go. I am frustrated with the overwhelmingly cynical and pessimistic views some people have constantly in this market. I was called a gatekeeper again today for my undying optimism for the team. The same guy who called me out for gatekeeping said I pick and choose the good and turn a blind eye to the bad. And then he proceeded to explain how it was a fact, yes, a fact, that we will regress next year. I've heard of double standards before, but this takes the cake. If I pick and choose the good and turn a blind eye to the bad, how is that any different than picking and choosing the bad and turning a blind eye to the good? Why is it that every time another franchise goes through some type of turmoil or firing or whatever, that this same faction of people immediately draw comparisons to this organization in an effort to shade the team that they are fans of? Buffalo today fired as many as 30 front office executives. This is unprecedented. And instead of being thrilled at the fact that we are not Buffalo and laughing at the complete dumpster fire that is and has always been Buffalo, we see some people calling for Benning's head again and comparing our situation to theirs. Let me just tell you straight up, what's happening in Vancouver is nothing like what's happening in Buffalo. In Buffalo, they hit rock bottom in 2014 with 54 points and finished 8th out of 8 teams in the Atlantic. They finished 8th again in 2015, won the draft lottery, drafted Jack Eichel, and since then have been continuing to be bottom dwellers, finishing 6th out of 8 this past season. In Vancouver, we bottomed out in 2017 with 69 points, nice, finishing 7th out of 7th in the Pacific before drafting Elias Pettersson, 5th overall. We have since then steadily improved year over year, climbing up the Pacific standings from 7th to 5th to 3rd, which we finished this past season. Not only have we continued to improve in the standings, but we have improved with our roster composition from our goaltending out, and we have never won a single lottery pick. Buffalo won 2. Listen, I understand. Some of you fans are growing impatient. You want to see the playoffs. You want to see this team win a Stanley Cup. You want to see all the right moves and never a bad one. But let me remind you of a simple truth. Good things come to those who wait. Patience is a virtue. The Chicago Blackhawks waited over 10 years to make the playoffs and finally become competitive again. The Pittsburgh Penguins waited over 4 years. The LA Kings waited 6 years. The Washington Capitals waited 5 years. Teams do not become competitive overnight. Canucks fans have waited 4 years And now in the 5th year, we are on the verge of the playoffs. Why are people so mad? We have improved every single year on our roster, and it's only getting stronger. The additions of Pearson, Miller, and Toffoli are bringing us closer to the cup, not further. That's just part 1 of Tej's rants, Tej's talk today. Your thoughts on that one right there?
Okay, so I fact check though. What are the 2 wins that Buffalo had? They had Dahlin and Eichel. They lost the
Dahlin and Eichel.
Eichel, they
No,
lost.
no. Eichel, they didn't,
Eichel was second. Either way, they still won the lottery.
What about that
They still
Reinhardt
won
one?
the lottery. I'm like sick of hearing that we're in a bad position. This team that we're on right now, like Vancouver, we are actually the new like kids on the block when it comes to the NHL. Teams around the league are starting to look at Vancouver and look, wow, this team is good. They got Pettersson, they got Hughes, they got Markstrom, they got Miller, they got Toffoli, they got Besser, they got Horvat, Pierce. Like we got guys on our roster that you need on a cup contending team or a team that can win the cup. And I just don't get for the life of me that why people think we're in a bad spot. We're not in a bad spot.
So I got a question for you, TJ. So when the Canucks win the Stanley Cup and Bo Horvat, you know, he lifts the Stanley Cup, how are you going to feel when the first guy he gives it to is Louis Eriksson?
He won't be on the team. Come on now.
No,
You know
seriously
he's not
though,
gonna
he's the oldest. He's the oldest guy, right?
All right, I got a question for you too, though. When are you running for MLA or MP? Because that was like a speech, man. That was a legit speech.
I'm not running for anything. I'm running out of frustration. I'm running for a cup commander in Vancouver. Honestly, like I'm getting sick. Look, another thing I wanted to say, I was going to add it to the rant, but listen, the Myers thing, like there's a guy who posted a Myers war chart and it's predicted. And we already know he was fall off, 29, age 30, age 31, 32. And by all accounts, before, he even signed, analytics models had predicted him to be tailing off and have a bad year. He's a 3rd pairing defenseman. What ended up happening? Myers played well. The underlying metrics showed that he was driving play. He was controlling shot share. He was one of the best on the Canucks team to do that. And all the underlying metrics the analytics community likes to point at were positive for Myers, except for the one WAR, which arguably not as good in hockey compared to baseball. But what I don't get is how people can sit there and shit on a player that's on our team and making a difference. He's helping the team.
This is what I'll say. This is what I'll say about your rant, okay? I agree with you that people are accusing you of picking the good things and ignoring the bad, and they're doing the exact same thing. They only pick the bad things, they ignore the good. The Canucks, under management by Jim Benning, they've made mistakes, all right? But ever since they drafted Elias Pettersson, he has done a great job as the GM of the Vancouver Canucks. He has built a squad that has one of the best defensive prospects, okay? It has one of the best center prospects in the entire world, right? And on top of that, he's surrounded with character, with grit, and goal-scoring capability. I listen to Randip's show every day. Maybe the defense hasn't been figured out yet, but the Canucks are much closer to being a true cup contender than Buffalo has been in the past decade.
And that's awesome points by you as well, man. Like, we talked about this yesterday, actually. We were talking about, do the Canucks have the core in place to be a cup contender? Not now, but a couple of years from now. And I'm, of the opinion that defensively, they need that one more piece. They need that one more piece that can help drive play in a different pairing. You need 4 defensemen that can eat minutes. But overall, the discussion's still positive. Overall, if you're going to talk about Buffalo versus Vancouver, it's going to be, why did Vancouver start to turn that corner and start it this year? And why hasn't Buffalo figured it out? Why is Buffalo still a train wreck? Why is Buffalo the laughingstock of the NHL, even compared to Ottawa, which is looking like they've got their shit in order, guys, but Buffalo does not. Vancouver is now, not only from a, what's in the system, but you talk to players across the league, and we can always talk about those conversations about Sam Gagner, Michael Del Zotto, and even Antoine Roussel and Jay Beagle, and those contracts that Jim Benning, whether he had to give them out, you can question that, but he gave them out. He had to bring people to Vancouver to play. He had to build some character in the room. He needed some veterans. Good, bad, or indifferent, they were deals that they made. But from then to now, talk to players in the league, Vancouver is on the radar. Remember when Dan Hamhuis took that contract to come to Vancouver, his home province, and that was kind of that aha moment, like, wait a second, this team's legit now because guys are taking less. Sure, Mike Gillis went crazy with the no trade clauses, but still, they took less to come to Vancouver. I don't think that day is very far away. So the conversation has turned the other way where all of a sudden it is becoming a destination again. 2 years ago.
It already happened, Randy.
Yeah, no.
Gustav Nyquist. What did he say? He wanted to come here this past year. They couldn't afford him, but he wanted to come to this team that was on the rise and looked good and it's attractive again. And that's the thing that, like, exactly like you said, Randy, like, it's happening now. The NHL and players around the league are looking at Vancouver like that team, that destination that can represent more opportunities for them to grow their own career, production and to, be part of a team that could win the cup and an organization that is being built the right way. It's funny, like, when you think of it both ways, though. Yeah, that's what the team is looking at now. But what about when the team was bad? How did the team look back then?
Yeah.
They didn't look good. And as a manager of a team that doesn't look good, but you have aging cities and an ownership that demands you to make the playoffs again, you're stuck in a position of having to overpay free agents to come here because you don't have anybody in the cupboards. You got no prospects to come up and fill those roles. You got nobody in your system, and your team is chock full of no trade clauses. So what are you going to do? You're going to sign, Antoine Roussel or a Jay Beagle.
Yeah.
You're gonna bring in Louis Eriksson because you got nobody else in the offense to, that obviously they didn't work out. Louis Eriksson lost his hands at the airport. I keep using that line. Rick Dollywell said it. It was a great line. What happened to Eriksson when he arrived in Vancouver? He lost his hands at the airport. What the hell? Brandon Sutter was never injured before he came to Vancouver. What happened when he came to Vancouver? He got injured all the time.
Yeah.
What the hell? These are
but those type of things. I mean, those things are out of the control of a lot of players, right? A lot of players, a lot of GMs. I mean, shit happens, right? You have to be able to maneuver and make things happen because
and that's
something
exactly
happens.
what he's doing. He's
Sure.
maneuvering.
But going back to kind of the comparison between Buffalo and some other teams in Vancouver, like, if you wanted to put the same start point to look at Edmonton when they drafted Connor McDavid the same year that Buffalo got Jack Eichel. That's their star center. That's the first building block. And then you look at the trajectory from that point on. The Canucks have gone better, quicker on a better trajectory than both of those teams. And you can make an argument that Pettersson is not the player that Eichel or McDavid is right now. He'll probably get there, but those players are better right now. And the Canucks are right there with both of them, right? And they started like 2 years or 3 years later. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's you can't really have an honest comparison and say the Canucks are in worse shape than other teams.
No, and I think your point about Pettersson maybe not hitting the offensive levels of an Eichel or McDavid, but defensively, guys, watch that next couple of years. Like we saw it this year where defensively, and not only him, Quinn Hughes as well, getting the best matchups or the toughest matchups on a given night. The ceiling when it comes to overall and what Elias Pettersson can do on the ice and his impact, maybe he's not going to be hitting 110, 115 points per season, but if he gets you 85 to 90 every year, or maybe 95, and then all of a sudden becomes that go-to guy, that mini Datsun, where, or maybe straight up, like to that level, that's
Ryan
great.
O'Reilly,
Yeah, and that opens up the other lines to do their thing too, right? Like Adam Gaudette, not great defensively. Well, when you don't have a third line checking line, you have a third line offensive line.
Yeah.
That kid can score as well. We know he's got chops. We know he's got a hell of a shot. You play him with the right guys, and all of a sudden it opens up options for your line. But as far as it's a polarization, right? We talk about it is that those first couple years of Jim Benning on the job, especially first 3 years, you can even say, and the fact that he's not Mike Gillis just rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. And yes, they came out with errors right off the bat because the team was bad. When you have Chaput and Jason Magna and Lyndon Bay on your team, and I know he traded for Lyndon Bay, but the bar was this low, right? The reason that this market got excited about Luke Schenn, it was yes, Quinn Hughes helped them, but also the bar was so low in Vancouver when it came to players that Luke Schenn looked like he could be the next coming of something great. No, we know he's not, and we know he's not that player, but that's how far the organization had to go to build up a player pool that was legitimately a good player pool. So I think the errors in the early few years of Jim Benning's tenure definitely hurt, right? trading for Goodbranson was one thing, but giving him the extension was not a great look, but it got you Tanner Pearson. So with every, it's what have you done for me lately? In the last year, I can't really criticize him too much based on the way he's built this team. Now, if they beat Minnesota, I ask you this question. Is the Tyler Toffoli move worth it? If they are in the first round of the playoffs, does that justify that move? Because for a lot of people, getting that experience and getting Hughes and Pettersson and everybody that kick at the can might be more important than Tyler Madden.
Yeah, I think people in Vancouver, I mean, I'll say people in the global sense because, you don't want to generalize, but people here are obsessed with rebuilding and obsessed with draft picks and obsessed with the damn draft lottery. Like at some point, we need to get out of that conversation. And if that means you lose in the first round a couple of years, well, so be it, right? Get those hard lessons. That's a better place to be than, always being in the draft lottery. Look at Edmonton again. I mean, do we want that many first overall picks? Do we need that many first overall picks? No. You need to run your team well. Buffalo too. Yeah, you need players that are tried, tested, and true. I mean, if we had another 2-3 years out of the playoffs, the Horvat's almost pushing 30 then, right? We just wasted his career.
It's also interesting if you think about the average age of a cup-winning team. You look at them, and not just the cup-winning teams, but the cup, finalists that lose. The average age of the whole team is around 27 to 28 years old. It was 28 for the longest time, and last year it was 27 when St. Louis. And you look at the top four defensive, the core age of those top four for St. Louis and the Bruins, it's around 27, 28. So you need these guys that have that veteran leadership, the veteran experience, and bring that maturity to the game that the younger players don't often have simply because of their age. When you come into a league and you're a young kid, you're learning the ropes. You're figuring out what it takes to become a pro. That's why Quinn Hughes can benefit off of a Chris Tanev. You can teach him what to do on a night in and night out basis, on a day-to-day basis, the routines from breakfast to lunch to dinner to game time. Those are things that players that are entering the pros don't know. They gain at, moderate amounts of information from the juniors to the, AHL or wherever you play.
The problem there is people in Vancouver, we see a young player like Bo Horvat and a young player like Elias Pettersson come in who just have the makeup that aren't going to stray the wrong way. But they forget that we also had Jared McCann and Jake Virtanen who, were freaking crazy, right? So there's more players of the mold.
Ben Hutton a little bit there too.
Yeah, they're going to be 19 or 20 or 21-year-olds more so than they're going to be 30-year-olds when they enter the league. Right. So you need those checks.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah. When it comes to building a championship team or even a competitive team in this league of extraordinary athletes, it's vital to have that lifeline, of a good mix of veterans and youth. And you look at the teams in the past that have won, that's what they have. They have that mix, and you need that mix. You can't just start like a young team growing up. Like you said, people want to hoard picks and young players, and all of a sudden they're going to turn the corner on them. It doesn't work that way. You got to have that mix. And Jim Benning, let's be honest, he took part of a championship organization that built a winner. Like the Bruins won the cup. Benning was in the room for a few years before they won, and the year that they won, he understood the game and what it takes to build that winner. And before Boston, he was director of scouting in Buffalo, and they had the most successful, standings, or they had the most successful run of season in their history from the products that he, helped draft. So this experience that people, they discredit so easily, I'm not going to discredit that. I think that's very valuable to have at the head of any organization. Somebody who knows how to draft successfully, to draft NHL players successfully, and B, has been a part of a cup-winning organization and knows the internal structure and everything that goes on to make that happen. That's Jim Benning in a nutshell. He just faced some tough, turmoil in the beginning because of he was handcuffed by certain, contracts, and there was three heads at the table. Let's not forget, it was Aquilini and Linden and Benning. It wasn't just Benning's show in the beginning. Linden himself, his experience wasn't there, and they brought him in as president. We all already know that that was probably a mistake in hindsight. But people don't know. As soon as Linden's gone, they're gonna say, "Oh, he was doing everything right," because he's gone. if he's still here, don't blame him. It's just crazy to me what happens in this town.
Well, even, jumping into the room after the game and chatting with some of the guys also, you get an idea of who really steers the ship in a lot of ways, right? And Bo Horvat is the leader when it comes to the captaincy, but there's also some veterans there that kind of guide everything. And you jump into the room, and JT Miller is one of those guys immediately. Like, if they take a bad L, he's that guy that's pissed off. If they're winning, he's cracking jokes with Jake Virtanen and a few of the other guys. Brandon Sutter, his injury history sucks. His contract to a lot of Canucks fans, majority, sucks because he hasn't been able to produce in the injury history. But when he's in that room, when he's healthy, like, he's one of those guys that also provides that, right? And you need that. To your point, good teams that build in a certain way, they need that component. Now, I think they've done a good job until now, but looking ahead now is, okay, Jim Benning, the first couple of years, you can say, wait a second, some bad contracts, but you had to do that because you needed to get good NHL players to that point. Last year or so, it's been good. Tyler Toffoli, I think it's a good move, especially if they win around. Tanner Pearson, excellent. Josh Levo, great. Go down the list. There's been some really good moves. Michael Furlan, you got to live with that one because that's an injury, and it is what it is at this point. You sign that guy. If you don't sign him, people are saying this team's not mean enough. All of a sudden, you bring that guy in. Everybody's saying it's a pretty good value deal. He gets injured. You kind of got to live with that deal. But going forward, this is the important thing with Jim Benning is how does he address the situation that is currently on his books? Does he have the creativity to do what guys in Toronto have been doing, being very creative with the cap situation? Is he that creative? Is he that guy? I can applaud what he's done in the last year, but this offseason to me is a very important one for Jim Benning. Can he be that guy that says, all right, sticky situation here. Can he navigate that? Because he's yet to show that thus far, right? Trades in the last year, excellent. Re-signing his own guys, he's gotten value there from guys like Bo Horvat and Brock Besser. Drafting, knocking it out of the park. One thing he hasn't really shown me is that, all right, here's a problem with the cap. How do I correct it? Other GMs have been able to do that to a certain extent.
I think that's going to come down to whether he's willing to part with picks, right? We know he's okay trading picks for players, but is he going to be okay with trading picks for cap space? And then
also, can he be ruthless, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Louis Eriksson, can he be ruthless and say, hey, Louis, you ain't playing here. Utica or Sweden, terminate that contract. Let's pull up Roomistrov.
With Eriksson, it's interesting.
I don't see him being ruthless, man. Like, he was a player, who moved into management. And I think part of why he's successful in signing players for less than what can be perceived as their market value is because he approaches them as a former player. You understand what I'm saying? I don't think he has the makeup to go out there and tell Louis, hey, I'm sending you to Utica. You're going to ride the bus. With Jim Benning, Mike Gillis had that ability, and that's why he was successful at what he was able to accomplish, right? But Jim Benning's not that guy. But I don't see him doing that. I mean, he might politely ask him, like, hey, can you retire? You made most of your money. But if Louis Eriksson says, like, yeah, hey, no, I want to play. I want to collect the last $1 million.
He also let Hutton walk, right? He didn't qualify Hutton. And when's the last time a Canucks general manager did not qualify as an important player as Hutton was?
But, if you don't qualify him, he becomes a UFA, which is actually beneficial for him. Understand what I'm saying?
But he lose them for nothing, and he most teams just automatically qualify their players just because it's something to do.
But remember, Travis Green did not play Alex Burmistrov, a player that Jim Benning signed, and they basically said terminate the contract, right? So if you put Louis in that situation where Travis Green says he's not in my game, like I'm not putting him on my team sheet, he's not on my roster, and if you basically tell a veteran that he's not playing and he's made most of his money. And guess what? You didn't make the team out of camp. Like, I think he's going to have to show that this year because all of the other moves, Sutter, go down that list, Berchi, like you're going to have to sacrifice something substantial to get rid of those contracts. Canucks aren't in that position, guys. You know as well as I do. They're not in that position to do so.
Hold on. I want to say one thing about Louis Eriksson. So we already know he's coming down the money owed, he's coming down to one more installment. It's going to be $3 million this summer. And then he's only owed $2 million more after that. When they pay out this $3 million, that's incentive, I think, for both parties, more so for Louis and the Canucks to reach an agreement where they can terminate his contract and then he can dictate his future elsewhere. they are at a point now, like Randip said, where Travis Green may just look at the lineup and say, well, Louis, you don't fit in the top 6 anymore. We don't need you there. And, you know, you're being beat out for the roles in the bottom 6. We're not going to stick you on the bench either. So what are you going to do? You're going to be riding the pony, you know, in Utica. He won't do that. You know, so what's going to happen is Louis probably going to get frustrated. And that's what you need. You need some players to realize that there's no playing time here anymore. There's no opportunity here anymore. You're just an afterthought. And then maybe that $2 million that he's owed kind of like doesn't matter as much. And he walks and they find a way to terminate it. The other thing is Brandon Sutter, and you asked how can we get creative? Brandon Sutter is a center in the NHL, and he's only got one more year on his deal after this season. I think he's a very tradable contract, if you ask me. 1 year.
I think he's tradable.
Like 2 years, no, it's a little bit much. 1 year, yeah, I think as a centerman, with the valuable veteran leadership that he can bring, and obviously players, and everybody's going to talk about that. You can ask the Penguins, you can ask the Canucks. There's probably room for a trade for Brandon Sutter to an organization, one of the bottom dwellers, maybe team like Buffalo, new management looking for some leadership, looking to right the ship. You know, some teams that are struggling, Arizona, if they don't, you know, go anywhere this year, looking to bring in some you know, unorthodox, you know, methods that John Chayka may not be familiar with, the stopgaps or leadership, older guys. But yeah, they're going to start to be some options, I think. And I think he's the guy. He's the difference. If we trade Sutter, kind of opens up some doors.
So at the beginning of the year, Dan Riccio and I were talking about this, and I did say Brandon Sutter to that degree can be that guy that you might be able to get something for him. But health has been another concern this year, right? Like, in order for him to legitimately build a case, I thought he had to stay healthy for the entire year and put up points. He wasn't really a difference maker. If you're drawing your roster today, drawing it up, where does Brandon Sutter fit against the Minnesota Wild? Like, legitimately, that's a question, because Beagle and Mott work well together. Gaudette's played well on the third line. You could put Sutter on the third line as a winger, maybe. But Roussel has
on my lineup.
Like, Brandon Sutter's probably not even playing to a certain extent, right? So
he's a utility player at this point.
So Thomas Drant and
right?
we had a back and forth on Twitter about this. I put out a lineup and I put McEwen in that spot over Sutter. And Andrew Walker actually said the same thing. Is like, Green is not going to bench Sutter. And Drance asked me who's going to be on the penalty kill if you take Sutter out. I think people are forgetting the fact that Tyler Toffoli could penalty kill. He's a penalty killer. He was.
But why
great.
would you?
Why do you want him to do it?
Yeah.
Here's what you do, though. Here's what you do. You have your first set of penalty killers is Mott and Beagle. There you go, 2 guys. And then you have a second set of second line guys, Pearson and Horvat. You want to keep that first line fresh as possible. Typically, one penalty, you need 4 guys. That's it, 4 forwards. The first 2 and the second 2, and they can rotate. That's all you need on the penalty kill typically if it's one penalty. If you need to, because Horvat and Pearson are tired, they can use Miller and Toffoli as a backup penalty killer guys. They
do that already. Like, they already use Miller when they need to.
Third line
right?
stays
That's
fresh.
nothing.
So that third line, no matter what, after any situation, comes out fresh after a penalty if you need it. There's options without Sutter there, in my opinion.
the one thing I would say, though, is even though I don't see, like, in my mind, the ideal lineup, I don't see a spot for Sutter. How is that different from what Travis Green will do? Because I got a big answer here, though. Knowing the way that Green operates, he's not scratching Brandon Sutter. So
he's gonna put Sutter on the third line. He's gonna put Sutter on third line so he can take draws for Gaudette. That's what he's gonna do.
He'll scratch him after
you
they
think
lose
that's
that
wrong.
first game,
Sorry. No, he's gonna be with Gaudette to take draws. Absolutely is.
So it depends on who do you have on that line going forward, then, right? Like, where's Jake? Where's Roussel?
Yeah, fair enough. I think what I would like, I see him like on a regular shift on the fourth line, but anytime it's a draw, he's out in the third line taking probably Roussel's spot, right? Roussel's going to play it on the shift, but he's not going to be out there for faceoffs.
Is Antoine Roussel himself, he is a penalty killer as well, isn't he? Like, I don't know how effective he has been, but he is an option on the penalty kill.
He is an option. He hasn't had the most success in Vancouver in that role, though. Like, he's
sure,
sluggish in that role, right?
He's good off the rush when there's speed. That's exactly his game.
I just don't see the logic behind Travis Green needing a penalty kill specialist who doesn't contribute at 5-on-5 for a playoff situation or playoff play-in round where you may not have many penalties in the first place. You know,
TJ, the problem with what you said, though,
called a lot tighter in the playoffs. We know that. maybe 1, 2, 3, you're gonna risk like a minute of penalty kill time.
There's
that
no-
could make
there's
or break
no-
your that could make or break your game though, man.
Yeah, there's
it's
no
special
chance in
teams.
hell. There's no chance in hell. The only right-handed draw they're gonna have is Beagle. There's no
No, they
chance in
can't.
hell they're gonna go. Yeah, they're gonna have Sutter in there.
Yeah.
If
There's
you
no
think
chance
it's
they're
through the
gonna.
draws,
There's
if
no.
it's through the
You
draws,
think
then yeah,
you
maybe,
think he's
but
gonna put Gaudette in an important face-off situation in the defensive zone out there?
No.
Fuck no. Pardon my language. Yeah, it's gonna be Sutter, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you don't have to like him, but this is the reason they got Sutter is for these tough games, for these playoff type games, right? I mean, if you're not going to use him now, then that they didn't need him. They didn't make him a foundational player. He is made for the playoffs.
But
well,
Tej, to your point though,
McEwen is up.
Foundational.
Go ahead, Randip.
Yeah.
but to your point though, if you're gonna build value, like this is value building time for Brandon Sutter.
Absolutely.
Hell yeah.
Like Jay Beagle, we can criticize his play during the season, but where did he make his money? It was in the Cup final run with Washington,
The playoff run, yeah.
not the regular season. So
He was amazing on that run too.
and
Yeah.
this is where Sutter, yeah, you're gonna have probably a really, not a very good line offensively in the fourth line when it comes to Mott and Beagle and Sutter. They're gonna be pinned in their own end for the most part, probably, whenever they're on the ice. But that opens up your third line all of a sudden, where to Sat's point, maybe you have Brandon Sutter out there and then you do a little switch. Maybe you bring on a Virtanen or whatever it may be, depending on where the draw is. But you have a third line that's generally very offensive, right? And so, yeah, you're going to have a complete black hole, as Jim Benning would say, of a fourth line, but not necessarily, that third line opens up things. So your point about trade value, like I got to see it before I even I trust Brandon Sutter will get something back. But if you're a Canucks fan, the good thing is, though, that time is now. Like if he shows his value, you might be able to bump it up a little bit, but we said that about a lot of guys the last couple of years.
I think that
conversation about too.
That fourth line would be just like the balls to the wall. That's the line that's going to get you momentum in playoff games when they're blocking shots left, right, and center. Right? These guys are going to put their bodies on the line. They're going to break their feet and still skate off, right? That kind of stuff.
It's a Ryan Johnson special, basically. Remember when he break his feet left, right, center?
Yeah, exactly. Right. That's what it's going to be, and that's what you need in those tight games.
What kind of a leash then do you give Brandon Sutter? One game?
He's going to have an infinite leash, man.
Infinite. I can't see that.
You got to remember though, man. Travis Green, when he played on that line. The reason he loves Tyler Mott and the reason that he loves Jay Beagle is because he played that style. And Brandon Sutter to a certain degree as well. Now he's transitioning to a third, fourth line role. Like those are Travis Green's guys, man. And he puts like the buy-in factor. You've heard Green say it over and over and over again. There's a reason, because those guys will, to Sat's point, they'll sacrifice it. And the problem is they don't score many goals. So you give them,
it's a big
10 minutes a night, and you hope that they don't get scored on. That's really what Green's mentality will be.
Okay.
Well, you want to switch gears here, TJ?
We're gonna switch gears. Just one last thing for all you guys, and then we'll switch to rapid Larsch here with Sat handling the questions. I just want two simple questions. First one is, do you believe we will see the playoffs? Because there's still some concerns here with COVID. And the second one is, what's your prediction for the Canucks Minnesota series? How many games and who wins? We'll end with Randip. We'll start with Sat.
Yeah, I think we're gonna say games for sure. It's almost
Well, a lot of players are getting COVID all of a sudden. So
yeah, I mean, there might be a second wave. There is gonna be a second wave, but I think it's kind of so far gone for all sports that we're going to see hockey games. And the NHL is not going to be the only league out.
Prediction for the series against Minnesota?
I think the Canucks have it, just because I think they're a deeper team overall, and they probably have a bit more speed and skill. But I know Minnesota scored a lot of goals, but I think it'll be 4 games.
Sorry, what was it? What was your prediction? I didn't hear that.
4 games.
Canucks win 3-1. Okay. Gulu, will we have playoffs, and what's your prediction?
I'm not really sure if we're going to have the playoffs, man. I know that they've started,
right?
Yeah, they've started the process, but if you're looking at the numbers over the last couple of weeks, I think there's a clear trend that the COVID infections are going up again. I think they just passed some sort of crazy benchmark today. The most deaths in the U.S. in a certain time period since World War II or something like that. Then, you can't ignore the public health issues. Gary Bettman can't ignore it. The players can't ignore it. So unless this trend that's building up here of a second wave is somehow, eradicated and they sort of flatline it again, flatten the curve again. I'm not really sure, man. And that's just I'm not an epidemiologist, right? So I can't
that's
say
fine.
yes,
That's fine, and I kind of agree with you there too. But if we do play, what's the prediction on the series?
I'm a pessimist, man.
I know you're a pessimist.
For some reason, I just feel like the Canucks can screw this up. Right?
Okay, so what's the prediction?
I'll say 5 games, Canucks win, but I'll go either way, man.
That's not pessimistic, man. You got the Canucks winning.
I'm letting everybody know that I'm on the inside.
He really thinks Minnesota's gonna win. He's just saying the Canucks are gonna win.
I think this highlights the pessimism that exists in the LarschCast. It just means that we're gonna lose 2 games but win the series.
Hey, Gulu, you know that if you don't go with the Canucks, then Aquilini's gonna take his money away from us, right?
Yeah, there you go. Oh yeah, the money that Aquilini gives us.
Yo, I was waiting. Well, how come the check didn't come in today, man?
The check comes here. That's why I don't. Randip, what do you think? Are we gonna have hockey? And your prediction for the series?
I think we'll have hockey. That's just my hunch based on the way that things are being organized and from where I see it. But I totally get what Gulu's saying because you look at the situation and the way it's playing out, even in Arizona, right? It's not great. And if Vegas is that hub city, which is
Arizona just picked up 4,000 plus new cases over 72 hours or something like that.
Right. So
or maybe even in a day, I don't even know. That's crazy.
Yeah, and so it's not a good situation, but I feel as though that they're gonna pump some money into this. The NHL is basically saying, we're gonna make this happen. We'll take care of testing. We'll do the lockdown aspect of everything. So my hunch, not based off of what I've heard or anything, my hunch is that we still have it, but it's a sticky situation, man. And
then prediction?
Prediction, let's go. I think it's gonna be a tough series. Like last time, Rogers Arena, some of you guys are probably in the arena. Like Kevin Fiala made Canucks fans shit their pants. That's how dangerous he looked. And that defense is really, really good as well. I still think the talent of the Canucks is going to win that series. That top 6 of the Canucks and Quinn Hughes is going to be enough. But it's going 5, guys. I think it's going 5, and the Canucks it's going to be tough.
I think the majority of those play-in series are going to go 5 just because you're coming off of time off, right? So that's the way I feel.
Well,
what about you, TJ?
I would have said 6 games if I had a 7-game series. Just so you know.
Let me just say, I actually think that there won't be playoffs, but because I agree with Gulu. We already talked about it. I just feel like it's trending the wrong way that they're going to have to make that decision. But if there are playoffs, let me see. Skies are blue, boys. The Canucks are going to sweep the Wild.
You had that way too planned out, man.
Yeah.
Let's go to Rapid Larsch, Sat. Go ahead.
All right, so Randip, we're going to ask you 10 questions here. Just don't think about them. Just fire away, right?
All right.
So I have them written here in a weird order, so I'm going to try to split the order around. But
first off, are you ready?
I'm ready, man.
Are you ready?
Okay, let's go.
I'm ready. Let's go.
And this Rapid Larsch is brought to you by Tej Talks. All right. Okay, let's get started. Okay, pakode or samosa?
Pakode. All day, every day.
What's your favorite sport?
Hockey, but I had to think about it. I love soccer too, but hockey.
Okay. What's your favorite beer?
Ooh, Stella.
Stella. Okay.
Yeah.
So you said soccer is your favorite sport, but if you had to choose cricket or field hockey?
Man, okay, I got to go. Actually, the one I played when I was in India, cricket.
Yes.
Cricket. Yeah. Because I know Punjabis love field hockey.
Yeah.
But last time I was in India, I played. You didn't offer me kabaddi. I would have chosen kabaddi though.
I thought about that one actually. Yeah.
Wait, so before you go to the next question, Sad, just a second question there. Who's your favorite cricket player of all time?
Oh, it's I gotta go MS man.
Sachin?
Oh, okay. MS Dhoni. Yeah.
MS Dhoni, yeah, the
There
captain.
you go. All right, let's get back to here. So, okay, you said you're a Miami Dolphins fan before we got started, but if you had to go Pats or Bucks?
Say that again.
Pats or Bucks?
Pats or Bucks? Oh, Bucks, man. I hate the Pats. I can't live with myself.
But the Bucks are in the same state, man.
No, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Fair enough.
Created so much hurt over the last decade plus, man. I could never side with the Pats on anything.
All right, fair enough. Okay, Linden or Bure?
Beret. It's the reason I got into hockey. Russian Rocket.
Awesome. Okay, which goalie, and you can only choose one goalie. Which goalie wore number 1 for the Canucks?
It's got to be Kirk.
Yeah, okay.
Kirk.
Yeah, come
There
on.
you go. That's good.
Gotta be.
Okay, sticking with goalies. Next
Drew
year.
Keenan for taking it away from him, or giving it to making Sean Burke wear it. He made Sean Burke wear number 1.
Okay, so let's fast forward about 10 months. Who do you keep in the expansion draft, Demko or Markstrom?
Oh man, I gotta go Markstrom because he's that guy. If I can't undercut my previous argument why he's priority number 1. So I got to go Markstrom based on what
Okay.
we saw this year.
Okay, we got a couple of questions left in the Sportsnet 650 questions. So
All
is
right.
Walker the shortest person to ever work for Sportsnet?
No, that's Dan Riccio.
Okay, I actually knew that, but I just wanted to bring that up.
No, Walker's
and
got
then-
the worst haircut though. I'm glad I could bring some class back to the show, guys.
He's got some messed up hair now. Okay, so last question.
That's so true. Walker looked so bad.
He's got
I had
the
to look at that. I was like, man, I gotta bring the.
You look good. You look good.
Your guests were weak on the haircut last week.
Yeah.
There are no ladies on this pod yet, but
Next
for a
pod.
single man,
So
you look
last question. Who reaches deeper, you or Riccio?
Ooh, effort me takes reach.
All right. Well, thank you
All
very
right.
much. Rapid Larsch.
So that's what we do, man. That's what we do. Me and Reach, all jokes aside, love working with the guy because we should talk each other constantly on air, off air, and we kind of roll with the punches. So I know when he gets an opportunity, he'll shit talk me as well. So he's good. He's an awesome dude. I know.
We'll get him on soon.
So,
We'll get him on.
so
we had him
aren't you like arguing to him that he should sort of like cheer for Cristiano Ronaldo now since he's on his team? Is that what? Yeah. But then you said that. But his argument was that, hey, like I can't forget about the animosity that I have against Cristiano Ronaldo, right? And but you're arguing that forget it, cheer for him now. But you can't do that with the Pats.
But that's completely different. Though. I mean, you're a player. Not let me pose this to you then.
Okay.
So he hates Cristiano Ronaldo.
Yeah.
Not as much as Canucks Nation hates Brad Marchand, but let's just say Marchand joins the Canucks. Are you cheering for Marchand? That's a comparable.
Yeah, I think you will. You'll end up doing it.
You will because it's your team.
I wouldn't want to.
Honestly, I don't even hate Marchand that much. It's hockey, man. No, I'll be honest with you. I don't hate him that much.
Brad Marchand, a 2-day-old aloo prota, you still eat it, but.
That's great.
Yeah.
Hey, I got a question for you guys though, since you brought up aloo prota. First time you've had host and the guest all Punjabi? Is this the first time, or have you done this?
So.
Yeah, because we've had Rick Dollywall on.
No,
I think that was the whole group though.
We had a couple guys that weren't Punjabi.
Okay, so this is the first all Punjabi LarschCast.
I think so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
Or Randip Janda of Hockey Night in Canada, Punjabi. Kind of works out funny that way.
There
Eh?
you go. Yeah.
Awesome.
No, honestly,
No,
it's
we're
been
happy
a
with it.
pleasure having you on. And I do want to do one last thing before you go. I mentioned it to you. Gulu and Sat don't really talk football, so this will just be me and you.
Okay.
Our way too early Super Bowl 2021 predictions. Who's the AFC champ? Who's your NFC champ? Who wins? You go first.
All right, I'm gonna go AFC. I gotta go with the current champs. It's Kansas City to me because the way that their roster looks and the way that they upped their defense last year, like Pat Mahomes is a cheat code, man. Unless he gets injured, you're not beating that guy, and that's the way I feel. Like legitimately, AFC, NFC. This is gonna make you giddy, but I'm going to the Saints.
Hey, really? You actually believe it?
I know there's turmoil there right now with the Drew Brees situation and all those comments that he made, but you look at what they have, playmakers, adding Emmanuel Sanders, and then you got Michael Thomas on top of that. You got Kamara. Dude. Like, that's legitimately an unbelievable top 3 right there. And I think he's one of the most underrated players in the NFL. But Cam Jordan on the defensive side of things.
Man, he's great.
Legit beast. And I love what they've done, man. So
You're making me so happy right now, man. I
know Brees took a step back last year.
Yeah, he did.
But to me, I have a feeling like the Saints are going to be with that new competition in the NFC South with the Bucs. The Falcons are going to drop off a little bit, you'd assume, but you never know. Like that
They
division.
haven't fired Dan Quinn, and they still have to fire him, so they're gonna have to drop off in the beginning here. I think he'll be the first coach to go.
Probably. And listen, Carolina's probably going to be half decent too, right? Teddy B might be able to bring them to respectability. That's going to be a tough division. So I'm actually going Chiefs Saints in the Super Bowl.
And the winner?
Oh, I'm sorry. I can't make you happy here. It's the Chiefs, man.
That's okay. Hey, listen.
Back to back.
So it's very close.
Yeah, Andy Reid.
It's very close to what I have. I also, obviously, but I think
You can't choose the Saints though. That's not possible. You can't do
no,
that.
Listen. This is it's actually true. Everything that Randip said took the words right out of my mouth, and he said it, not me. So you can't. You gotta give him the credit, okay? But he's bang on. Having Sanders on the Saints now, you got a 1-2 punch on wide receiving that you didn't have with just Thomas before, and not only that, the third option is Kamara out of the backfield, and not just that, you have Taysom Hill, who's also developing still. Like, he's becoming more effective, and he's a great utility guy. And you got Jameis Winston backing up Drew Brees. I think they're going to actually incorporate all three guys a lot more, and Drew Brees is going to be more rested going into the playoffs because they want to see his durability shine later. And Brees gets hot around that week 10 mark, like week 8, 9, 10. He's always freaking on fire, and then there's a little bit of a drop off heading into the playoffs. So they're going to use Jameis Winston, I think. And
are you a fan of him again?
He's back on par because honestly, you can't say enough about what he did. Standing up to Donald Trump, like he stood up to Trump, he directly addressed Trump, and said it's not about the flag. That is huge for the Black community. And everybody that understands what Colin Kaepernick was doing and what the racial injustice, all these protests are about, it's about the systemic racism. It's never been about the flag. And they've tried to say it from day one, and Trump hijacked that and said it was about the flag and called him a son of a bitch. And Brees stood up, basically said right to his face, you cannot make this about the flag anymore. That upset a lot of people who believed that it was about the flag. And it actually endeared him to his teammates more than before, I think. And I think there's going to be a special bond this year. People are thinking that the O-line's going to move aside. I think they're going to stand tight and protect them even more because what he did standing up to Trump is huge. Well, ultimately, actions will speak louder than words. But I think that the notion that he's the racist is – I don't think you can call him that after what he did. My other pick, I'm going with the reverse Madden curse now. Patrick Mahomes, Madden athlete, last year, Madden 20 – won the Super Bowl, broke the Madden curse, started a new one. Who's the Madden athlete this year? Lamar Jackson. What's going to happen? The Ravens are going to the Super Bowl, and the Ravens are going to beat my Saints.
Whoa!
Yes.
Look at that. That's
Ravens
also
are going to
heartbreak,
beat
man.
my Saints.
Okay, so the NFC to me was the tougher one, right? Because I think the AFC's got two heavyweights.
Two heavyweights,
Take your pick, right? It's a good pick either way. The NFC, like the Eagles, you have –
Eagles are dropped off, though. It's the 49ers and maybe the Saints at the top.
The Saints, I know some Seahawks fans are going to throw their name in there because of if you listen to Reach Deep, I'm not a huge Seahawks guy. I think it's the biggest bandwagon around. And yeah.
Bigger than the Raptors?
Pretty close, man. Pretty close. You know what? Okay, so legit, Tej, you're a Lakers fan, right?
Yes.
So I feel as though, and you're one of the good guys that stuck around with the Lakers, but I feel as though like NBA basketball fans in Vancouver, they have like a cycle. They'll go from the Lakers, some of them, to the Golden State, and then Golden State dropped off, and some of those same people were wearing like Raptors jerseys. It's like a cycle, right? So
they're the fair weather fans. They're the ones who think about the Canucks. They're the same type of fans that don't really pay attention, don't watch every game, and then something pops up in the feed and they jump on the mob, right? And I think fair weather fans, they're always going to exist. Seattle, the Seahawks obviously have a lot of them here, and the Blue Jays, when they come to town, you see everyone's a Blue Jays fan all of a sudden, and then nobody talks about them for 364 days of the year. But the Raptors, especially, that was a huge bandwagon affair. I don't know where all these jerseys came from. Never seen them before. All these hats and gear.
That was a bit different though because that was it was Canada, man. It wasn't just Toronto.
Toronto.
It was like pride. I don't care. I don't give a shit about basketball either, right? But you had extra little bit of interest because it was Canada. That's the only reason.
So
yeah, of course you can say that, but it's just frustrating. And I know Randip, you feel the same way. It's just where are you? You got to. What happened to staying through thick and thin. Like that's part of the experience of sports is being a fan like that. But I don't know. We have to accept the fair weather nature of the sport. But
We do.
Some
we're a
people
diehard
just want
podcast.
some people just want to be associated with greatness. You understand what I'm saying? They want to take part in a culture that's fun, right? And once that culture, it turns into something that isn't exciting or isn't novel anymore, and it's just losing. People forget about it, man.
Yeah.
People forget about it. I think
I'm a Dolphins fan and a Knicks fan, so clearly I'm wrong in this situation.
The Dolphins, yeah, you got some excitement now, a little bit. I mean, the Browns had a little bit, and then now it kind of.
Yeah.
Well, it didn't really. It's kind of a
Fair
dip, still. I mean, Satir Shaw might explain a little bit more there, but yeah, I think like you said, I stuck through with the Lakers, through thick and thin. I want to say one thing about the Lakers. We don't talk too much basketball here, but when it comes to LeBron James, I don't consider him a Laker unless he wins the championship. He needs to come in and win, because they're still like, before he achieved like his level of greatness, there was always this Kobe versus LeBron beef that existed. And with Kobe now having left us, it's kind of like LeBron has shoes to fill, and if he doesn't fill them, it's tough for me to sit there and think of him as a Laker. I'll always think of him as like a member of the Heat or the Cavs, but he'll never be a real Laker for me personally until he wins that championship. And this year was the opportunity for him to do it with Davis and everybody in the mix, and Kuzma. They had Kuzma still. I mean, there was all talks of him leaving, part of the deal that general manager got fired for not making. But yeah, it's exciting times, I think, in basketball overall, and to be with the Lakers as a fan of the Lakers right now, it's exciting again. And the Clippers rivalry is huge, but that's just how I feel about LeBron James personally. But I don't know if you can.
No, it's
agree
an exciting time, man. Like, and I think that point about with the Lakers, if they don't win a championship, like the really storied franchise, like the Lakers or even the Celtics, right? Like the Celtics have had great players over the last couple of years. Who do they appreciate as Celtics legends, right? It's
all the old guys, like
it's all the old guys like Bill Russell, Kevin McHale.
Oh, back in the day, yeah.
Way back in the day, but even
Yeah.
Garnett, Pierce, like the guys that won championships matter. And the Lakers are almost the exact same thing. It's where you have such a history that winning is the only standard, right? And hopefully the Vancouver Canucks get there one day, but they aren't there right now. But like, you win a couple of cups or you win a couple of championships, and all of a sudden, all right, you get to the top of the mountain, and getting halfway doesn't count anymore.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where the Lakers are. And hopefully in this market we can feel that standard too. But I think, in our lifetimes, I'm 33. I'm imagining you guys are around the same age.
34, yeah.
Yeah, 32.
Yeah, so I'm born and raised in this city.
Bill is 45.
I'm 30, man.
I didn't realize you were that old. All right, good for you, man.
He's 30, but looks like the cha-cha here, man. So.
But yeah, hopefully we get to that level. But just seeing that one win would be nice during our lifetime.
Oh,
I'm gonna end it on this one question then, and it's for you only, Randip. Will this core win the Stanley Cup?
I'm an optimistic guy by nature. I'm gonna say yes.
There you go. You heard it here on the LarschCast. Thank you for joining us, Randip. It was an absolute pleasure finally getting you on. We'll get you back on down the road. Maybe you and Reach can make it a co-appearance here, and we can have some fun with that. But yeah, thank you for coming on and doing this. It was really fun, and I hope you enjoyed it. All the best.
Thanks,
My
man.
pleasure, guys. And I know it's been a
Thank
long
you.
time in the works, but keep killing it. You guys are doing a great job, and keep repping the city the way you guys do. I know there's a lot of fans in the city, but having a voice for the fans and just consuming hockey and talking about it. Let's keep it going, guys. So keep up the great work.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Man.
And as always, follow the LarschCast on Instagram and Twitter at LarschCast. Stay tuned for a giveaway announcement with Gourmet Grays. Follow them as well on Instagram at gourmet.grays. Thank you for joining us for episode 49.